Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 23, Deku vs Class 1A, which picks up from where we left off last week with Deku running on empty and being confronted by his former classmates after he was almost defeated by one of the Tartarus escapees. And it promises a pretty intense and emotional confrontation. And honestly, it really was all of that and more. But before we get into it, I would like to remind you that I have read the manga and I'm aware of any relevant future plot points and details, but for the purpose of these reviews, I prefer to look at things from an anime-only perspective, so that anime-only fans can watch along and join in too. And so with all that being said, let's jump into the episode. So we start off the episode with a very brief recap of the closing moments of the previous episode, where the class confronts Deku and prepares to subdue him as he doesn't want to lead them into danger or attract trouble to UA, and so instead he's just trying to escape. And this was a really short intro, to be honest. I guess they wanted to get into things quite quickly and not have too much filler, which was interesting because I'm used to these episodes padding things out a touch, so it did take me by surprise. And already, that gets you on the edge of your seat, because now you know that they want to take full advantage of the episode's runtime, and that's pretty exciting. And so then we go into the intro theme and we come back and we start this episode's deeply wholesome confrontation, where each member of Deku's class tries to talk him down from his self-destructive path and convince him to come back to UA, whilst also reflecting on the impact that Deku's had on each of their individual lives and journeys as a hero. Bakugou reveals that they've all read over the notes on One for All, and now they all understand which quirks he has and which he can use at this point in time, which in turn implies that the class knows how to counter him, or at least has some ideas. And of course this is proven pretty much straight away, as when Deku blasts them with a max strength smoke screen, Bakugou just blasts it away, so they can easily see which direction he's flying in. And this in turn gives Koda time to swarm him with pigeons and try to talk him down. Deku then tries to use Black Whip to break free, which gives Sero time to use his tape to bind up the Black Whip and stop him escaping, whilst telling Deku that letting Black Whip hang out of him like he's doing makes him look way too scary for a hero. And this in turn triggers a flashback for Deku, who remembers how Sero pretty much trained him to use Black Whip in the early stages of the quirk. But no time to reflect on that because Deku has to then dodge a blast from Jiro's speakers, while she reminds him of how nice he was to her during the school festival, letting him use her notes as a basis to work off. And this is followed by Ojiro binding him in his tail and reminding him how Deku got so angry at Shinso for talking shit about him during the school sports festival, but of course, Deku manages to escape from him as well. And this early stage, this was such a wholesome section, because these are largely minor characters in Deku's arc. His periphery friends, his classmates, acquaintances almost. And yet he still means so much to them that they're going to come out and do all of this just to keep him safe. It's very wholesome. And it's really cathartic to see after a fair few episodes of lonely, depressed, worn out Deku. And it also highlights just how much Deku cares about being a hero. If the idea of even these low tier friends getting injured because of him makes him go out on his own and risk himself over and over again, just to draw fire away from them. I think it really just enhances all of their characters so much. And then we see the difference between a friendly classmate to a proper friendship, as Tokoyami uses Dark Shadow to smash Deku through a building and hold him down. And I gotta say, kinda wish Tokoyami was included in the story the same way as the other members of the big three. You know, Deku, Bakugou, Todoroki. I wish he was part of that group, because he has one of the coolest quirks in the show, and the most unique look in the class. So it does make me wish that he had far more prominence in the actual storyline. He basically just shows up, looks strong, and then is forgotten about until they need a spooky surprise yet again. And that's a shame. Sato then starts yelling at Deku, telling him to think about Eri, but Deku brushes him off, which I found quite sad because it's quite clear that he's gotten to the point that he doesn't even feel like a hero anymore, just a liability. And he obviously thinks that Eri would just be better off without him. And considering he was the hero that actually saved her from Overhaul in that really sweet moment, and how he was really the first person that she trusted besides Lemillion, it's all doubly sad. This episode really is hitting me quite hard in the feels. He then gets strapped into a machine by Momo designed to knock him out, but he breaks free, so Kaminari grabs him and they get wrapped in electrical tape by Shoji, and then covered completely by Dark Shadow, and yet they still can't hold him. And so they just keep trying to remind him how much value he has to them, that he's their friend, and he inspired them all to keep growing as heroes. But regardless, he breaks free, and on we go. Because after all, every member of the class needs to get involved for this one. Deku then gets wrecked by Todoroki, who basically just screams at him for a while, trying to convince him that he needs to let them help him, before Froppy arrives and does the exact same thing, giving him the friends don't give up on friends speech. And honestly, every single flashback sequence in this show, it's just making it more and more emotional. And Deku losing the mask makes it even more pronounced because you can see the pain and the frustration in his face, in his eyes. And you can see that he really does want to be able to listen to them, as he knows he is being a hypocrite, as he would always certainly try to help anybody in his class that was in the same set of circumstances that he's facing, but he feels like he has to get away from them, to protect his friends, to protect everybody. This poor kid needs an adult to sit him down and tell him it's okay to get help. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. I tell you what, All Might, learn to talk to him. We then have a brief cutaway where Kirishima, Ayama, and Hagakure hand over the captured villain to Endeavor, who then allows them to go and help subdue Deku, telling the other heroes nearby to stand down and just leave them be. Well, at least Endeavor's improved in dealing with emotionally fragile teenagers, hey? Thankfully, his huge self-pity arc has paid off in some way. Meanwhile, Deku gets free once again and continues dodging his various different classmates until Mina, Todoroki, Bakugou, and Ida all combine their powers to launch Ida at extreme speeds to catch Deku and prevent him from escaping. And yeah, this whole sequence, very awesome in every single way. I mean, the whole episode has been, but this final team-up section, it was just something special. And really, it goes a long way into making this episode one of my favorites of the season. I mean, in general, the episode's just perfect to me. It balances being quite lighthearted and wholesome with being quite serious and sad. I love it. I mean, that moment where Ida activates his turbo and grabs Deku's hands and talks him down and they're both crying, that's a chef's kiss moment. And I love that it was Ida. I mean, the story has really left him by the wayside in many respects after those early seasons established him as an important player. So it's nice to see that special bond with Midoriya brought to the forefront once again. Anyway, they fall back to Earth and get caught by Kirishima, and then there's even more wholesome moments as Kirishima reveals to Deku how he'd inspired him back in episode 2 of the first season when he attacked the sludge monster with no powers. Just once again, spotlighting yet another underrated friendship that Deku has. We then move on to, Deku's main friendship arc. His relationship with Bakugou, which finally comes full circle as Bakugou publicly apologizes for bullying him for all those years, and reminds him of what he told him during the battle with Shigaraki. Don't try to win by yourself. My god, this Bakugou redemption arc that's been sizzling in the background since season 3? It's such a good long-term storyline, and it has such a perfect payoff. There's no yelling or screaming or Bakugou trying to be all macho. All of that just gets stripped away. And he apologizes for his actions for the first time ever. And he even calls Deku Izuku. This episode, it's just overloaded me with the feels. I mean, somebody, go get a villain. I need to see some action before I get too misty-eyed. Deku then collapses, they gather him up, and they walk him back to UA where we finally see the Hero 13's face. And then as they approach UA, you hear the yelling and the screaming, with all those voices coming together to say that they don't want Deku to come into the compound. Because, screw this random teenager, am I right? Because they're all terrified that All For One will target them now, which in turn is going to set up for Uraraka's big moment next episode, as we see in the preview. So yeah, I've already said this, but this was a truly great episode this week, and don't know how you top it honestly, but I am excited for next week nonetheless. But regardless, that's the end of the video, and I would like to say that these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Do you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.